And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again across the Louisiana plain, where we are elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism in Louisiana, elevating the cause of constitutional conservative citizens across the state, and rapidly now draining the Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for inviting us to be part of your day. We are so grateful for you. You're the best listening family anyone could possibly hope for, and we are only here because of your encouragement, your prayers, and your financial support. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. We'd really appreciate it if you'd also help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Please like the show on whatever platform you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share it. You can share short clips instead of the full episodes from our YouTube and Rumble channels, and links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Well, today we will continue on the foundationally critical issue of election integrity with a veteran and a true leader in the national election integrity movement, returning guest Matt Meck. But before we meet Matt, let me read the scripture of the day. It is Psalm chapter 72, verses 12 through 17. And it says, "He will care for the needy and neglected when they cry to him for help. The humble and the helpless will know his kindness, for with a father's compassion he will save their souls. They will be rescued from tyranny and torture, for their lifeblood is precious in his eyes. Long live this king. May the wealth of the world be laid before him. May there be ceaseless praise and prayer to him. May all the blessing be brought to him. Bless us with a bountiful harvest, with golden grain swaying on the mountain fields. May the cities be full of praising people, fruitful and filled, so that his name may be honored forever. May the fame of his name spring forth. May it shine on like the sunshine. In him all will be blessed to bless others, and may all the people bless the one who blessed them." So this is Psalm 72 in the Passion Translation, and the title of the psalm is called The Righteous King, and it's the last psalm of David. And in it, David is recounting the goodness, the righteousness, and the justice of God. And he speaks of the Lord as the highest example for how a king should conduct himself. He shows us a picture of how when the people fully submit to the Lord and offer their all to him, his reign as righteous king brings blessing and prosperity to the people. And it becomes a virtuous cycle of people honoring the Lord and the Lord blessing the people and causing them to be prosperous. This is something that I know many have been praying for, many of you have been praying for. So let's keep praying for this very specifically, for our state and for our nation to yield fully to the Lord, to fully return to the Lord and serve him faithfully so that we can live in peace and prosperity.
Indeed, Danielle, it all begins with humbling ourselves before the Lord. It's the fact of the matter is that our weakness is made powerful in his strength. His strength and power is made perfect in our weakness, and we have to humble ourselves before him. And it's so very important if we want his power to shine through and our vindication to show up through him. And so that is the prayer, that we would humble ourselves before him so that we can prevail in his righteousness, not in our own. It's such a pleasure today to have, as you mentioned, retired U.S. Marine Matt Meck with us, who has done so much and continues to fight the good fight on election integrity across the board in America. Matt, it's such a pleasure to have you. How are you today, sir?
Hey, good morning. Doing well, and thank you for that prayer. You know, every day I start off for our coalition, our group, everyone in this fight to save the republic. I always start off every day with Psalm 91, 1 through 16. So thank you for your prayer today.
I've been reading a lot of Psalm 91. I feel like it's a daily prayer for myself right now, and I just feel like we may be heading into some choppier waters, and asking for the continued protection of the Lord is really important.
And as Chris said, God has a way of look throughout the Bible of using imperfect people for his perfect plan.
So well said. So well said. And speaking of choppy waters, Danielle, Peter was walking on some choppy waters as long as he had his eyes on Christ. And he didn't start sinking until he took his eyes off of Christ. And of course, Christ was there to save him even then. But let's keep our eyes on God as we move forward. Matt, as head of coalition of candidates, you've done a lot of work, but tell us about UnAuthorized. Is UnAuthorized sort of an offshoot of coalition of candidates, or sort of a more specific focus of coalition of candidates? And what are you doing in UnAuthorized?
Hey, Chris. Well, it grew out of the coalition, and I'm not the leader. Certainly, I'm a facilitator of the coalition. As we always tout, we are a distributed networked organization. We're leaderless, and that way it befuddles the enemy. And when I say the enemy, it's the uniparty, the globalists, the statists, because they don't know who's in charge. Is it General Flynn? Is it Patrick Byrne? Is it President Trump? No, there's nobody in charge, right? We are that group. But what we found, and Rayla Campbell's on the board, Rachel Ham's on the board. I executive director it because Christina Cramo had asked her to be on originally. When she couldn't and let us know, we had her resign and got Rayla Campbell on. Rayla Campbell, of course, ran for Secretary of State of Massachusetts. She was a Republican nominee. You'd think would have more notoriety, the first female Black candidate to have that, but she was Republican, so that didn't fit the narrative. But what we found is listening to people like Doug Mastriano and Rachel Ham, Jim Marchant, Mark Fincham, various candidates who were running for office, hard to get a campaign like chair, a campaign manager, because they weren't part of the good old girl, good old boy club. And if they did get somebody, they told them, you will say what I say, when I say it, how I say it, and you'll jump and you'll say, yes, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, how high. And that's not who the coalition is. That coalition, which now has expanded, we're from Hawaii to Massachusetts, from Alaska to Texas. It's authentic people who are, I'd say, constitutionalist populists, right? And they're authentic to who they are. What's that song? Was it Bob Dylan? You can change your mind, but you can't change me. These folks are controllable, as General Flynn would tell us when he's been to a couple of our forums or called our weekly call a couple of times. He's called in there and says, not controllable in that they go off the handle, but they're not controllable. They don't work for money or fame or power. That's not what motivates them. We saw that with Carrie Lake and what the NRSC was doing through Jeff DeWitt down in Arizona, right? She says, I'm not viable.
And nothing frightens them more. Nothing frightens the corrupt powers that be more than people who cannot be controlled by them.
Cannot be controlled, and Christina Caramo is one of those people who cannot be controlled. We saw the hit piece, on her, the coup d'état they tried to launch on her, because she's not controllable. She is restoring populism to the GOP in Michigan. Instead of 11 or 12 wealthy families running, I call it engineered ineffectiveness of the Michigan GOP, she wants to bring it to the ownership of the average man and woman who is the GOP in Michigan. So UnAuthorized grew out of that. It was how to help candidates navigate this. So instead of them having to pay $20,000 a month to a professional consultancy class, who I tell them, I'm not besmirching anybody in that field, but if you are a vanilla kind of person and you don't have some authentic core, then yeah, you probably need one of those kind of people to make you a starlet, right? But if you know who you are, through donations we get from folks, we will help you with subject matter experts, whether it's media people, election science people, folks who understand messaging, fifth generation warfare, get out the vote, those kind of things. If you're looking for opportunities to train an election ecosystem education, right, to understand the entire election system from voter registration to voter verification, poll books, to tabulation to reporting, or 5GW, let us help you. So what we're trying to do is certainly for the candidates, and I knew this has caught some flack, but you can be a grassroots Democrat, you can be a grassroots Republican, and we have grassroots Democrats in this coalition. We've had them at several of our forums who believe in the Constitution, right? They are as much at sick at their leadership of their party as the Republicans are at their party. And we said, if the Constitution is your North Star, we will help you. Meaning we want to help you push that message out. 501c4 that kind of formalize this more loosely organized coalition.
What kind of traction are you getting? Because we know you worked with Brandon Trosclair. We obviously had a disappointing loss here in Louisiana, which has some question marks around it from my perspective, maybe not from other people's perspective. But are you winning? Are you seeing? I look out at the Secretary of State landscape, and it's been so captured by Soros candidates. Are there some bright lights?
Yeah, I'd say look at Diego Morales. He's the Secretary of State of Indiana. He's part of our coalition. Look at Chuck Gray, Secretary of State of Wyoming, part of our coalition. Look at folks who ran for Secretaries of State, didn't win those, but are the Idaho GOP chair, the Michigan GOP chair, the Kansas GOP chair. So yeah, we are winning, meaning folks are getting into office, and folks, if they're not into office, they've become amazing leaders at their own level, educating folks and waking them up. That's why I think you see this. I call it the Great Awakening, right? Where it doesn't matter the demographic. We had on one of our calls a couple of weeks ago, Mark Carter, the black gentleman in Chicago, who was calling out the board of supervisors on, and we had about the illegal immigrants in Chicago that are displacing the black population there. That he's like, wait a second, we're citizens. People are waking up, I think, to, as the comic. I used to love reading Far Side, and the two cows are looking at the grass, like this is grass. We've been eating grass. I think folks are realizing they've been eating grass, right?
Right, right.
And so, matter of fact, probably the first weekend in April, Pastor Corey Brooks, who's a friend, black conservative pastor in South Chicago at New Beginnings Church, will go up to there. He asked us to come up there and present the election ecosystem education training to his congregation, not to tell them how to think or who to vote for, but here is the state of the election system in your locale. And is this the system you want? Are you happy with this for casting your vote? So we are making traction. I think we've moved that needle at a en masse perspective across the country, where folks have woken up. So that's why Danielle, we shifted not just from teaching the election ecosystem education training, but fifth generation warfare. Folks in their core realize something's been wrong with our country. Something feels off. And we try to help them bring words to that. And then equally important, have them understand not to fall into the traps that they want you to fall into, like with J6, right? I know we talk about that here a little bit later, but they wanted us to get violent. Do not get violent, right? We don't do what they want you to do. You're going to play into their hands. Your neighbor's not bad because they're a Democrat. They're not bad because they're a Republican. We are all Americans. There's a hell of a lot more that binds us together than separates us. And so how to not fall into those traps and how to counter their arguments.
Yeah, there's a great quote this guy that I follow on Twitter and on Rumble says very often. I think it's his hallmark tagline, which is his handle is just human, and his tagline is understanding is greater than reacting. And he institutes basically a 72-hour rule. Anything that hits the news that causes you to want to have a reaction, take a deep breath, and then, pray about it, think it through from multiple angles, and then you'll have a better path forward than if you just do what they want you to do.
That is so right. And it would take hours to have a dissertation on this. But if you go back and look at, by the way, someone who's Patrick Byrne's a big fan of this person. He was probably one of the most influential people in the 1900s, Kurt Gödel, who was a Princeton fellow, who Einstein loved, by the way. And what he did, if you look back at Hilbert and Ackermann in 1928, Principia Mathematica, and that's part of the Frankfurt School, and the Marxists coming over from Germany and trying to cause dissension here via haves and have-nots. And they realized it wasn't going to work in America. You had to have something different, right? Black, white, male, female, gay, straight, whatever you can to separate. They were trying to construct a system of control that would control humans. Right, control how we act, massive control over us. When Gödel comes across, and that's G-O-umlaut-D-E-L, when he comes across in his incompleteness theorems, and he says, hey, actually these machines have a finite capability and cannot do what you think, or the systems cannot do what you think they can, but evidently human mind does not. It blew up their world. So John von Neumann, who was a computer scientist, talks to in his letter, a letter I think 1930 to Gödel, and says, "Wow, you've reawakened my thought process on logic. Basically, you proved the incompleteness of mathematics. You proved the incompleteness of a system." So what then they did is create the Macy conferences from the 1940s to the 1950s. And out of that, I won't go into more great detail, but out of that, you get folks like Kurt Levine and others with the National Training Lab who create the psychological control mechanisms that we see now instituted upon us, right? The National Training Labs, to a certain extent, DEI, all these things that we can no longer control the system. So now we're going to, via influence and shaping and shaming and
Propaganda.
gaslighting, we're going to insert the human's interaction with the system. So now we're going to try to control the human's thought process. And that's, to your point, what that person said is great. Sometimes our side gets a little bit too like an edge rusher in the NFL instead of being like maybe a free safety. They rush in and want to attack instead of saying, hold a second, why is this happening? Let me think about it, and let me not be led around by the nose. There's someone trying to lead me around by the nose purposely to have a reaction. Let me think about this for a second.
Yeah. Matt, your unauthorized and coalition of candidates, based on everything that I'm hearing you say, it sounds like this is really sort of a comprehensive training, not only for candidates, but just for American in general, about how to navigate in this system that we have to navigate in, and how to avoid the pitfalls and the landmines, and how to effectively operate in this morass that we're living in, and it sounds like very powerful to me.
You're right, Chris. It is that. It's basically how not to be controlled. Right? They want to control you. How, as Laura Logan, who has become a friend and what a wonderful American treasure, she's moderated a couple of our forums where she talks about ambiguity rising. Right? They want to cause this chaos, cause ambiguity. And several, on our calls, sometimes they struggle and they go, "How do you know what's reality and what's truth?" And one day, somebody's attacking General Flynn, then he's a good person, and Burns a good person, bad person, Bannon's a good person. And I said, it's designed that way. And you started off with prayer. I said, go back to the Bible, go back to God, get in communion with Him, and help Him guide you on what is truth, right? Because He's love and He's truth. So that's what we try to do, Chris. You're exactly right. Is not just help folks understand the election system and how it is vulnerable and how it was designed to be vulnerable, and why would anybody have issues with transparency and verifiability? They don't know why, but realize it's just part of a larger system of control.
Absolutely. I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. Let's shift gears for a second, Matt, and talk about, there's so much happening in the news right now related to election integrity at the state level. We have seen so much that basically we had to just cherry pick a couple topics to talk to you about. But one of them is happening in Michigan. So it came out in the news a few days ago that hundreds of people double voted, and I believe the Secretary of State knew about it and did nothing. This is probably not new news to you, but it's news that is in the news.
Right. It links back to GBI strategies, and someone who's been with us from day one at our first May 2021 inaugural Secretaries of State conference was Joe Hoft. They report these things, and for everything about this was the most secure election in history, right? 2020. Look at all the things we're finding, and what the QVF, the qualified voter file, I think, which Gateway Pundit just got access to on 1 February of 2024 this year because of Freedom of Information Act, we're finding these things that we had indications and warning were going on. And now when you get the evidence, right, whether it's QVSs or qualified voter files, you're finding that evidence. And people want you to just, disregard that. But what do we find? From 2020, 2022, and 2023, hundreds of people, minimum hundreds of people in Georgia, Michigan, voted more than once, which, by the way, is a felony to vote more than once in that state. So I think what you're seeing is the power structure, which, this is my opinion, have used, or it took us to a closed loop election system controlled by ones and zeros that you have no idea what's going on in there once you, especially in your state, you don't have a damn paper trail. You're worse than Georgia as far as your Dominion machine.
That's very true.
And I feel bad for people in Louisiana. I mean, because Louisiana, what a powerfully independent-minded state of people. You guys survive in the damn swamp, for God's sakes, and you've got a machine that is as Joe Altman said in his scathing rebuke of these these GOP uniparty folks targeting Tina Peters, what's allowing to be happen in your state is as bad as what's that gentleman Weinstein in Hollywood, who raped all those women, and people just, they knew, but we're not going to look. We're not going to look. Your citizens are being raped of their right to vote.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the election officials here, Matt, have just completely ignored it. We had Alex Halderman testify in front of our voting system commission here, damning testimony about the vulnerabilities of virtually all voting machines, ballot marking devices, and all that. And they basically ignored it. And so we're on the verge now. Hopefully something still can be done to stop it, but we're on the verge now probably of investing over $100 million in new Dominion voting machines in the state of Louisiana. A lot of people are trying to stop it, but it's unfortunate that they have not been responsive to the clear evidence involving these machines.
Chris, it's sad, and I tell you, Dorothy Moon, who again now is the Idaho GOP chair, she ran for Secretary of State of Idaho. She had lost in the primary, and she's a firebrand. And you have several of them as a growing coalition of America First State Party GOP chairs. Julianne Murray out of Delaware, who, by the way, she blew up the whole Hunter Biden plea deal with her amicus curiae brief, or friend of the court brief, on part of the Heritage Foundation to that Delaware court that blew up the Hunter Biden plea deal. That was she. She ran for governor of Delaware, and I think only lost by 16,000 votes as a Republican. So, but her, Dorothy Moon, Mike Brown in Kansas, Josh McCoon in Georgia, Christina Carombo in Michigan, they are forming a very powerful counter narrative to the RNC leadership that is just completely divorced from the rank and file, I think, GOP member. And I'd say probably the same holds true on the DNC side. And you're right, they're trying to reassert those principles, Chris, and get empowering grassroots take away the power from the establishment, even in your state party, and bring it back to the people. And what Dorothy showed us, it was a federal court ruling, has never been overturned. I've shared it with many people. That showed your state party, which we're doing, that they're doing in Nevada, right? You have the primary today, you get the caucus on the 8th. The caucus is only what accounts for Republican electoral votes. The primary is something that the Democrat legislature just passed, that the Republicans are not playing in that, except for Nikki Haley, which they'll get no votes, no delegate votes at all, zero. But what I'm trying to say is that this federal court case, never been overturned, never been appealed, says your state party as a private organization can control how you run the primaries. Your state party does not have to use the damn machines if you don't want to. Wake up, Louisiana GOP chair. You can take care of your own people in your party. In Nevada, that's what they're doing. The caucus, you have to go to a precinct level. It's not rolled up at the county. You have to show your ID. They verify that you are who you are with your ID, your driver's license or passport, something like that. Verify you're a Republican voter, you're registered Republican, and then you vote in secret on a paper ballot. every state GOP organization could do that if they wanted to, based on federal law.
If they wanted to.
Wow.
Yep.
Every state GOP,
That's right.
Every state DNC could do the same thing.
And Matt, that is the reason why grassroots organizations like ours, like Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, the State of Freedom, the podcast we're on now, are prospering and flourishing in the state, because the average Louisiana citizen feels so disenfranchised from, and the average Republican feels so disenfranchised from their own party. And it is so unfortunate that the establishment Republican Party in Louisiana, in many respects, has really become really more like the, quote, uniparty. They seem to be more aligned with the National Democrat Party on certain issues than they are with their own base here in the state of Louisiana. And it's unfortunate, but you know what? Somebody has to fill that void, and our group and others are filling that void.
You are, sir, and I tell you, Mark Cook and I, the first time I saw this disconnect in person with a party leadership and the people, we were invited out to Anaheim, California. It was April 2022. It was the California GOP had an endorsement convention. And if you got 60% of the vote, then they would endorse you for candidate. That was for Rachel Hamm. We were out there for her. She was running for Secretary of State. And I saw this chasm between California GOP leadership and the rank and file GOP member. And then, again, as the Bible says, right, take the log out of your own eye before you take the splint out of your neighbor's eye. Our own, and I'm a registered Republican, but to be honest, from 1992 to 2020, I was a libertarian. I'm more of a, as Patrick Burns, I think what he said, his father had his theory of government was deliver my mail and get off my porch.
Right, right. I love that.
Yeah, they had disdain for the rank and file person, right? And you had. And they had this thing called packet communications. It was like voting by vote on this machine, or this little handheld thing. And by the way, a lot of corporations use this. I think the Lutheran Church uses it. A lot of religious organizations use this to vote in board members and so forth. And we found, like the day of the vote, when it's funny, all the America First candidates didn't get 60%. Somehow they didn't get that level, and they didn't get the endorsement of the California GOP. And then we found there were anonymous voters, but every candidate was going to get copies of the voting record to show everything was straight and narrow that Tuesday after that Sunday. And months go by, no one's getting anything. And they finally tell people like Mark Cook, who was Rachel's technical advisor there, was, well, the data was corrupted, so we just got rid of it. I mean, this is the California GOP.
That's honest, though. The data was corrupted.
It was corrupted, yeah, and they didn't want anything to be seen. So to Chris's point, you're right, Chris. I mean, what's the difference between McCarthy and Hakeem Jeffries in the House, or Schumer and McConnell in the Senate? It's as Phil Waldron used to say before, you hold up a dime, and he goes, here's the heads, here's the tails, and you hold it on its side. He goes, not a dime's worth the difference between the head and the tail.
That's so right. True. It's very, very interesting. Corruption and self-enrichment know no party boundaries, and we're seeing that more and more. But speaking, Matt, of vulnerabilities of these machines, what about Alex Halderman being able to hack into a Dominion voting machine in 10 minutes in the middle of a federal trial in Georgia? Is that just astonishing, or what?
I think he did it in 10 seconds. He was just
okay, yeah. I mean, 10, 15 seconds with an ink pen,
and that was just the BMD, right? The ballot, just a one component of the system, and you have to understand the election ecosystem. It's vulnerable in all the silos, right? Of the voter rolls, the voter verification, the tabulation, and reporting. And by the way, we've outsourced them to third parties. Why? On all those things. But yeah, and I think the Judge Totenberg, and I believe, she's going to, from what I understand, talking with Garland, Favorito, others who are on calls, he has, I believe, every Saturday. They're looking towards the end of February for that ruling in that case. I think for effect, he flipped the vote from George Washington winning for president to Benedict Arnold, just to have that effect, right? And remember, Haldeman is not. He's not a MAGA person. He's not he's not a Trump supporter. And the people who brought this case were like Stacey Abrams folks. These were Democrats who felt the machines were disenfranchising them. And as I tell people when they say, "Well, you all election deniers," I go, "Well, then so was the Democrat Party from 2000 to 2019, up into the election 2020." And the Democrats had a rich history. They understood something was wrong. Some for political purposes, but some a deep concern. And sadly, many in the Republican Party, our rank and file, because our folks were winning, like, we're not listening to you. Clint Curtis, he's now a Democrat, was a Republican, and kind of alerted to this in like 2004, I think, when he first testified in front of Congress. He's like, gosh, he goes, first Democrats are awake and the Republicans are asleep. Now the Republicans wake up and Democrats go to sleep. Why can't we all get on the same page?
And yes, and Matt, and what's the difference? It's like 2016, as you alluded to, all the way up to 2020, all of the Democrats are screaming about the vulnerability of these machines and how they can be manipulated and votes can be switched back and forth. And then in 2020, when Joe Biden wins, all of a sudden it's no longer an issue. It seems like nothing has changed except the narrative.
Again, my opinion, it's because the system of control, those controlling the organs of our power, of our government, certainly at the federal level, I'd say also at your state and local levels, Trump was a disruptor, right? Bernie Sanders was a disruptor. He had to be dealt with. And I don't know if he was bought off, he got into the lake house, whatever, but he was a disruptor, right? And they cannot be allowed into the system. And Trump sneaked into the system and I think showed the fallacy of what's going on, right? As a businessman, he's transactional, right? He doesn't care if a Democrat brings him an idea or a Republican. If it's a good idea and it's transactional, it solves the problem, I'm going to implement it, right?
Yeah.
And he was solving problems. But the professional political class, again, my opinion, can't have a problem solved because then you can't stay in power.
Right. 100%. When you solve problems slowly but surely, they work themselves out of a job without.
There's no funding. There's no funding if there's no problem.
That's right. There goes their funding and there goes their job. They're not interested in solving problems.
So, we have folks, just as an example, part of our coalition, she was at Florida 1.0 and 2.0 and so forth. And I say these were, if folks go to the website, I'll give you the letters first and then give you what it was. It's ACCFEI.org. So Alpha Charlie Charlie Foxtrot Echo India.org. Just stands for American Citizens Candidates for Election Integrity.org. That's the website we had created. Mark Cook had created, so we could live stream all of our election integrity forums, and they're archived there, so you can watch what we did. And you'll see the Clint Curtis, Democrat, Cynthia Harris, Democrat, Black Democrat out of Orlando, Chantel Rhodes, Black lady Democrat out of Fort Myers, Greg Marcel Dixon, Black gentleman ran against Clyburn, going to run against Clyburn again in South Carolina. Dr. Michael Addison, same thing, Black gentleman who ran against Clyburn. Tamara Johnson Shealy, Black woman who ran against Raphael Warnock. They woke up, right? They see what was going on. If they didn't tell you they were a Democrat or Republican, and you listen to their story, you would say, "Oh my God, you must be a Republican," because if you came from that perspective, because they saw similar election irregularities, they saw similarly their party leadership smacking them down for attacking or going after orthodoxy party leadership, and now you have these folks. Tamara's one of them. She's going through all the Black churches in Georgia, not telling folks how to think, how to act, but here, open your aperture, right? Open your eyes and see what's going on. Hey, by the way, there can be voter suppression and voter fraud going on simultaneously. Wake up.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's great to hear that that's happening and being exposed, because you're so right. It hasn't occurred to me on such a broad scale, but if you think that the people actually voted in Raphael Warnock, who, he's psychotic. He's absolutely psychotic. The man is, the way that he gets up and preaches and then also talks about late-term abortion being okay in the sight of God. Just if you take that one single thing, that the people didn't vote for that.
And I tell people, could you imagine Jesus? Try to go back 2,000 years. Would Jesus ever say that? Would Jesus? And if he does, because as I try to say, and I was raised Catholic, but to me, to me, the God, to me, that relationship is not a religion. It's a relationship with Christ, right? I transcend religion, right? Religion is concocted by man. Jesus got to us directly, right? We had wholesale, no retail, wholesale, right from the Father, incarnate in flesh on the ground. And he said, I'm here to give you a relationship with the Father through me.
Yeah, and it is. There have been a lot of crimes and a lot of horrific actions throughout history committed in the name of religion, which can be misused and abused for sure. And you definitely do not want to miss part 2 of our interview tomorrow with Matt Meck on election integrity and a host of other very, very exciting issues.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC, at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.